Welcome. I'm Doug from HD Ellsworth. The D in HD, if you don't get it, you're definitely not my wife, and this is Dying to Retire. Join me on a candid journey from my government job to the freedom of retirement. As one of the last of the baby boomers, I am hanging up my federal badge and diving into what comes next. I will talk about what led to my decision, on why it was time for me to retire, and what I did right, and what mistakes I have made. I am not an HR expert, nor am I a financial advisor, so I have made a few mistakes. When I can, I'll slice through the noise of today's headlines with a sharp, no-holds-barred commentary delivered with the kind of honesty only retirement can afford. This podcast is a safe space for non-woke people, and while I try to keep everything somewhat above board, and if it has to be said bluntly, it will be. Vegas rules apply here, so let's get started. Apologies, folks, for the lateness of this episode. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I was traveling for work, and that has set my schedule back a little bit, that and a little bit of procrastination and everything. But it was really nice traveling for work. But one thing I want to point out, what was interesting, because I was in the Southwest, but I noticed at the airport that while I have to show an ID, there were folks there that were able to get on airplanes with a white envelope with black lettering on it without showing anything. While frustrating for those who are conservative in nature, seeing that's going on, you realize what's really TSA doing. And the second part, though, I will have to give it to the airline, the patience of the individuals that were there handling these undocumented, the illegals, and handling them. So you have to give it to them. They did keep their professionalism there, regardless of what their personal thoughts or beliefs were. So you have to give it to them on that one. Now, on to something else that I find very interesting. Men and women are very different. So I'm going to go with this. When men, and please reach out, let me know, dying to retire podcast at gmail.com. I'd love to hear y'all's experiences as well. When men tell other men about their thinking about retirement or they're about to pull the trigger for retirement, men are very straight up, hey, congratulations. What are you going to do next? Even though we're not looking for a full answer. But we're like, congratulations, time for your rest. You've been working really hard. What's different is when women tell other women that they're planning to retire, the women get all, I hate to say it, and this is a generalization, get all happy and say, oh, it's finally time. You can spend time with the grandkids or kids, nieces and nephews. You can travel. You can finally go to the beach. You can write that great novel you wanted to write. All these things that happen when women tell women that they're about to retire. When a woman tells a man that she's about to retire, the same thing pretty much happens. We congratulate the women. Hey, you deserve it. It's about time. That way you don't have to put up the trouble with work and the whole 9 yards. It is when a man tells a woman, let's say a 50, 60, or 70-year-old man tells a woman or women that they're planning to retire or will retire. Again, this is a generalization because it's happened to me recently. It gets a little hokey. The first thing is, oh, you're too young. And that's what happened to me when I was getting my hair cut the other day here where I live in the Socialist Republic of Montgomery County, Maryland. I was getting my hair cut, and the lady cutting my hair, who is older than me, and yes, I know she's in her late 60s, 70s, cutting my hair. And first they thought I work from home. I don't. That's my wife. The other part, though, but I plan to retire soon, so I can, if I do anything, be able to work from home. They were like, first, you're too young. You're too young to retire. That's too young to retire. And the lady cutting my hair, she's like, yeah, my husband worked until he died. He died at 65. What? I'm like, so the first thing they say, you're too young to retire. Then they're going to say, how are you going to manage? Are you be able to pay for everything? They immediately go to that route. And it's kind of interesting. Men are like congratulatory to men and women. Women are congratulatory to women. But when a man says it that they're planning to do, the women are very critical. It is as if the women want the men to work till they die. So, yeah, honey, no, dead. That's it. No fun, no anything like that, no golf game, no whole 9 yards. Even if the woman's retired, they still want the men to work. Now, I just find it interesting because there's a bunch of different studies, and you'll see the YouTube stuff on there. A man could actually retire, and if he was just going to eat frijoles, tortillas, and huevos, eggs every single day for the rest of his life, he could do it. He can make it work. Women, on the other hand, want, oh, I need to go out to have dinner. I need to go do this. I need to go do XYZ in general. Again, not every woman, but it's kind of interesting of that dynamic. And it got me really thinking. Again, the woman who was cutting my hair, she's talking about how she had to go back to work. They didn't have enough money, but I'm looking at her hand and she's got all these diamond rings. They're cocktail ring size, but they're not fake. And my brain's going, of course you have to work. You didn't save. And the recently thing happened at my workplace. There's a lady who's been on the federal job probably 15 more years than me. So she's not yet got her age, but she's got 30 years in with the federal government. It will be like 35, 36 years when she finally retires. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You'll retire in 4 more years. Be fantastic. I said, because I've been putting so much money away into my thrift, almost 30 to 40% of my net take home pay. And she's like, no, I'm not like that. Back in the day, her husband and her made the conscious decision to spend the money then versus putting it away for the rainy day, putting it away for the future. So she looks at it very differently. And again, like I was alluding to a moment, what's kind of interesting is most of the debt in the United States today is owned by women. So they naturally project that on the men. If you're a guy and you talked about retiring, was there any difference between how the men and how the women reacted, including your spouse? What was it? Like I said, dying to retire podcast at gmail.com. I'd love to really hear what you have to say. All right, moving on. When it's time to go see your financial advisor, there's a couple things I want you to keep in mind because I had to do this. I knew I had to go see one. I have a credit union. The credit union has one that it's free of charge for the initial assessments where they take a look at it. So what I had to do is I made an appointment and everything like that, working through the bank. It took a couple of weeks. But I had to make sure I brought him documents. Now, he ended up asking me for these, but I was also gathering them as well. One thing, if you know when you're planning to retire, you need to go to the Social Security Administration's website. And if you don't, go there, get an account. It takes a moment. Once you get the account, you're able to download what are your projections for retirement at 62, 63, 64, all the way up to 67 on, because it tells you how many modules or points or what do they call it that you have to have. I think it's around 40. So it will show what is your estimated payout for Social Security. Now, remember, it could be a little bit more because those of us, what I found out actually, for those of us who were in the military prior to the 2000s, our credits didn't get as much in there, so it could have a little bit more money. Now, it's probably pennies on the dollar only, but it has it. So, one, you need to get your estimated Social Security payouts. You get that from the Social Security Administration. Two, if you're a federal employee, most of them have an application, whatever agency you have, go to it and find out what is your estimated pension payouts based on 60, 61, 62, whatever it's going to be, because you can do the multiple maths. So check on that. You want to get those printouts. The other parts, they want to see your investments. I have TSP and other ones. They want to see what are those estimates and how much are you putting in so they can estimate how much is going in before you retire. The other part, which we're all blind and hard to talk about, is how much do we spend each month? So we need to know you have a mortgage, a car payment, and any of this stuff, but how much are you spending each month? And it's kind of hard because we deceive ourselves because how many do you have? Prime, Netflix, Hulu, Disney, all this shit that we're all paying for. Because I'm going to tell you at the very end, he's going to say you need to be more efficient with your spending. Doesn't mean you have to stop your spending. They're going to say you need to be more efficient with your spending. So I had to get all this information and bring it in there because what they do, they're going to run it through a thing called the tool. And most of these tools do what they call the Monte Carlo simulation. Through the simulation, they run it, 10,000 times based on what the stock market, the Dow, the S&P, and everything else has done in the past 20, 30 years. And they will give it an estimate on how well the highs and lows, what it's going to look like. And then they'll give recommendations off of it. Mine, he says, oh, don't take your Social Security to your 70. Well, shit, most of the guys in my family, like I said before, die at 72. So F you, that's not going to happen. Nice guy, sorry. That's what's not going to happen. The other, and he did it because if I passed, my wife would get the higher amount. And that's another thing to talk about. But we're looking at it and all the other stuff. So you have to be honest and be prepared to go to your financial advisor with all that information, warts and all. However, on the side, there is a website called Honest Math. Honest Math has a nice simulation tool that you can go on and you can put that same information if you have it on there without going to the financial advisor. I call it a step A before you go to C, which is the financial advisor. Start going to that because it's going to give a rough estimation. The reason why I found it as a useful tool, like my financial advisor said, was hey, start burning down your annuities or whatever you get from your TSP. Burn that first before you start taking Social Security. And I didn't fully realize or understand what he was saying until I did the Honest Math tool. What was interesting in the Honest Math tool, and I'm going to plug it in, I'm just making up the numbers here, is I'm going to retire at 60, start getting a pension. I'm not going to do anything else but based on my pension. And if I start doing annuities, I can go 6, 7, 8 years burning down my TSP and other investments to I'm about four or $500,000 level. Apology. Can do that. But when Social Security kicks in, I'm no longer needing to pull from my TSP, so it starts gaining again. So on the estimates, the what's really good on Honest Math, it will show the highs and lows and the average. It has that in there. What's also scary in Honest Math, they have this thing called the Black Swan event. What's cool on Black Swan is it will show you where you're able to put in, there's going to be a shit storm for the market. It's going to drop 40, 50%. And you pick a date when it does it, and it's going to do the math on that. It's going to run the Monte Carlo simulations again, going to do the 10,000 stuff, but it's going to show you what you look like. What was interesting me, I threw in a couple Monte Carlo simulations, and it will show how much money the high low I will have by the time I die. Because again, these simulations are what's your expected retirement date, what's your expected expiration date when you die. So all that's in between there. So take a look at those. Highly recommend you do those. And again, and this is what a financial advisor in that class I took for the federal government also threw it in. This is going to show you how much money you leave your spouse or your children. Now, I don't want to leave the pool boy a lot of money or my spouse a lot of money for the pool boy. And a damn well sure ain't going to give my child a couple $1,000,000. So, during this time, you're probably going to have to be taking a little bit more money out down the road because how much money do you really want to leave your children? Because they should work and build their net worth up as well, or at least give them a little bit of help. So, again, when you're going to your financial advisor, these are things you want to make sure you have in play. Again, what's your tax information, what's your payroll information, what's investment information, what's your Social Security information, what's your expected pension payouts. But before you go to the financial advisor, go to the website Honest Math, do the simulation, and it'll help you prepare for going to the financial advisor. And last of all, don't lie to yourself about what your expenses are. Put them all in there because it's going to realize, like me in my last year, I really have to stop paying for a bunch of things I really don't need and start looking at, hey, what's retirement going to look like? Next up, now let's talk about one thing, sick leave for federal employees and how it rolls over each year. Now, fortunately, this strategy is not something that's told to new hires when they're onboarded, excuse me, maybe on purpose, maybe not, who knows. But unfortunately, I wasn't told this until about 5 years into my federal time. Why is this so near dear to my heart? Well, I was recently on a TDY out west, and I was talking to a somewhat or senior officer. She had been in employment for almost 25, coming up to 30 years, and she was getting ready to retire or thinking about retirement. And I was talking about my upcoming retirement and everything. And she was like, what do you mean sick leave? What do you mean it goes to the back end? I thought you just cashed out like you would do regular leave. I'm like, no, it goes on the back end. Well, she's like, what? Well, sat down and started talking to her. One, she's like, "Why didn't someone tell me this in the beginning when I got hired?" I said, "I don't know." And like I said before, who knows? They maybe don't do it on purpose because they don't, there is a financial tail to the federal government on it. And the federal government could be a toxic bitch sometimes, so it doesn't want you to know. So here's what the math is, and think about this. So if you have 20 years of service and you have a year of sick leave built up, that adds to it, so you get 21 years of leave or 21 years of service accredited for. Now, what the math is, a month of sick leave is 174 hours of sick leave, and a year of sick leave is 2,087 hours. And I know the math, it should be 2,088 because that's 12 times 174, but it's the federal government and bean counters. And to make it easier for them, each month is technically for them only has 30 days. So that's how they look at it. However, the government also is a cheap and cruel mistress, and they only credit for full months, no halfsies. So, long story short, while this adds a little extra money to your pension, and who doesn't want a little extra pension, that little hanging a bit about your sick leave. So, if you have a month and a half or 11 and a half months, when you come to retirement, burn that half month of sick leave because you're not going to get credit for it. It's not going to go the back end of your retirement. So plan to use it. So this does take some math. Now, to get around this, if you're just coming in, and again, this is about my journey into retirement, but I'm talking to new people if they're coming in, talk to a manager or HR about, hey, can you start booking what they call comp time? She didn't realize that in there. Now, to book comp time, to use comp time, you have to have comp time. The way to start gaining comp time is, those overtime hours, instead of charging overtime, charge it to comp. Now, comp does have an expiration date from the year of time, but use that instead of sick leave. The other thing to do is also use annual leave versus sick leave. So if you're a person who doesn't burn all their annual leave, think about it, plan accordingly, and start using your sick time. So if you have, using annual leave instead of sick time. So if you use annual leave and comp time, that allows you to start rolling over the gift that keeps on giving, which is called sick leave. That's it for today. Curious, concerned, or just want to chat? I'm all ears. Reach out at dyingtoretirepodcast@gmail.com. And if you find yourself nodding along or you just enjoy the ride, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Hasta luego.